You want to develop psychic powers, but you don't know how. Unfortunately, there's no institution that can teach you. Well, there are various different schools that claim to have knowledge, but they all seem to have varying levels of success. So what you want is the broadest horizon possible. You want to see all of the styles, all of the systems, both high and low. Well, I've got something here for you today. You see, the feds have dropped some new psychic knowledge on the X board of 4chan. This is what we'll be reading through today. Do not feed the egregor by Anonymous. All psychic or magical phenomena stem from direct observation. This is because observation collapses quantum probabilities, but it does so in a manner directed by intention. All of it is probability manipulation. It's the only psychic abilities humans have, but it's probably the most powerful possible one. I'm not sure if he's saying it's one of the only, but anyway, I think this guy needs to read some Dean Radin, Supernormal Real Magic. Nonetheless, let's see what this Anon has to say. Now, everyone is a little bit psychic. No, not only a fraction of humans, everyone has at least the potential. Agreed? To increase your abilities, you have to observe faster. This is getting my Gurdjieff boner tingling. You have to observe faster with higher frequency, more times per second, and more intensely. So let's see what he says about this. Let's see what his idea really is. All you need are headphones and any site or app that lets you put any beat that has a specific frequency, a sound that beeps a specific amount of times per second. Okay? People are usually vision-oriented. When you focus on something in your field of vision, it seems like a continuous movie, but it's composed of many discrete and distinct frames. Humans usually have a visual frame rate of 3 to 13 hertz, 3 to 13 times per second. This is the alpha frequency in human EEG. What you have to do is train your brain to process and observe faster. In order to do this, put on an isochronic tone higher than 13 hertz. I recommend you start with 15 to 20 hertz. You will then focus on the sound. At first, it will be hard to even distinguish every beat, but you will be able to do it with practice. This is because whatever activates at the same time in your brain inevitably connects. So if you have a high-frequency stimulus, and at the same time you direct your attention to something specific, it's easier to accelerate the cognitive computation to that object of attention because it is connected to an inherently faster stimulus, forcing it to acquire the same frequency. So this is actually kind of interesting. It reminds me of, like, you know, the CIA semi-hink stuff. So the CIA in their projects to study remote viewing and astral projection, they found someone with, years and years of experience in Zen meditation can do it. Or they can get one of their agents to do it by listening to hemi-sync binaural beats. It would sync the two hemispheres of the brain, and this would allow extra normal phenomenological experiences. It seemed that was the key. Where in this, it's not something so dissimilar. What Anon's trying to do here is he's trying to speed up the brain functioning itself. More precisely, he's trying to sync you to a higher vibration, literally in this case. I should also mention he's using sound here. This is a key in Taoism. So if anyone's studied Taoist meditation, you know they use the word ting, or listening. So usually, people have a really hard time struggling to keep their minds silent when they meditate. That's why the Taoists give the key of listening, because they basically say, when you're listening to someone genuinely, you're not thinking. Because if you're thinking while looking at someone, you can't hear what they say. So that's kind of the key. It's when you sit to meditate, you put yourself in the position of listening. So you start to listen, and that makes your mind fall silent temporarily. And by directing listening, that directs a pure awareness, a pure intention that allows you to clear the mind more easily. So it's interesting, Anon here is using the faculty of listening. You listen and you have your collected attention on these beats, on these hertz beats. And so they're faster than, I guess, the human frame rate. So the idea is if you sync up to this higher frame rate while you're also intent on something, it's almost like you're trying to make a crack in reality and break out in between the frames of reality. You're trying to make a little gap and escape through that. So it's kind of interesting. You can kind of see his logic, what he's going for here. So let's see where he goes with this. Once you can do this, focus on any point of your vision, and with every beat, try to concentrate as intensely as you can on that visual point. Okay? This is you learning to observe. So he's adding in a bit of self-awareness, self-observation there, or the reality of the self. You are not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you are this thing that just observes. Some clarifications. It's not without risk, and it takes a bit of energy. So be mindful about your health and nutrition. Fair. Spiritual or energetic practices are respectable precognitive attempts to explain anomalous effects of cognition. Yeah, I guess. Any esoteric, mystical, or magical system is caused by anomalous effects of human cognition. So is caused by, or they are the cause of? He's got some interesting interpretations here. Your brain is literally a most manipulable substrate for probability manipulation. You use psychic effects to act and think. It's just that the brain meets the mind halfway, and things that aren't brains don't. That's why it's easier to manipulate plants than rocks. They are more brain-like. I guess that's kind of interesting. So he's basically saying there's matter that is more brain-like or is interconnected more like a brain is easier for the consciousness to influence. Some crystals are extremely manipulable and enhance effects. This is because for some crystals, the state of every part depends on every other part. This makes crystals something like maximally observant of themselves. This is the cause of their anomalous characteristics. Okay, it's interesting. Cats aren't very smart. Oh, just offended a whole bunch of women there. But have a very high perceptual frame rate. This is the reason for their crazy fast reflexes. It's also the reason why they were venerated in ancient times. Similar reason why a lot of people who contact higher intelligences feel as if their agency is negated by those beings, being of higher perceptual frequency. Okay? Another perspective to understand this is through the principles of causality and division. Say there's a cause, C. Someone with very limited perceiving capability would see it as C, and C is bound to lead to E effect. Fate is determined for this person. Many others with an average perceiving capability might perceive C as made up of C1, C2, and C3, with each leading to the corresponding E1, E2, E3 effects. This part of the population has some control over their fate. Now apply that to yourself. So he's basically, this is interesting, but he's a bit too materialistic here, because he's talking about manipulating causes in the sense, he's talking about causes we see in the world, but he's not, how should I say, he's not accounting for the fact that some causes that we see are actually already effects. There are occult forces that are cause things that happen in the physical. And so what we see as a cause is already an effect. So he still kind of has something, but what he's doing is he's interrupting a chain of effects. So there's an occult cause that happens in the metaphysical world that has an effect in the physical world, and then in the physical world, like billiard balls hitting against each other, you see a bunch of effects, have an effect, have an effect, have an effect. So via intervening in that chain of effects, you can manipulate it. And how do you intervene in a chain of effects? He's basically kind of breaking it down, or saying you can break this down, or using this ability to break your frame rate somehow allows you to break in and manipulate the causal chain. It's an interesting idea. Okay, so let's keep going. Now apply that to yourself. A level 30 Grand Mage from Reddit who can perceive at a very high rate, Lamau. You can break down any cause into 100 little causes, giving you seemingly infinite freedom of choice in any situation. Causality can never be violated, but the causes themselves can be broken down, which then open up all sorts of possibilities for you. Causality can never be violated, so someone's been reading Berserk, but the causes themselves can be broken down, which then open up all sorts of possibilities. So this is just an extension of this theory, yeah. Strict meditation is extremely useful, if not absolutely necessary. True. I recommend Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha by Daniel Ingram. It's free online. Mr. Daniel Ingram, the self-appointed arhat. Okay, seems legit. You can check him out. I haven't read his stuff, so I'm not going to judge. Not going to judge your journey. This mechanism basically explains most, if not all, psychic phenomena. Once again, you need to read some Dean Radin, bro. Think about it this way. When a psychic manifests a ball of energy, he is manipulating probabilities to manifest it. That's why flashy powers are rarely efficient, much less used. You don't just create the main effect of the ball, but creating its visual effect is partly an independent process that takes effort. So he's probability manipulation and a supremacist, and he's just getting everything and throwing that throwing everything in that bucket. Oh, and higher frequencies are tricky. Make sure you are actually hearing the frequency. An example, sometimes if you're hearing a 20 hertz, it might seem you are catching every beat, but if you checked, you would realize you are perceiving at 10 hertz, and your slow brain is fusing every 2 beats into the perception of 1. That's actually useful advice. Genuinely useful advice. We do deceive ourselves when we try these internal practices, and it's very hard to get them correct. Make sure that doesn't happen. You can use any timer to estimate this. The first effect you will feel after a few minutes of practice will be the ability to hear higher frequency things, like the electricity running around you. If you can hear higher frequency things, I assume you'd be able to hear a dog whistle at some point, so maybe that can be a litmus test. Do I mix this with my visualization practice? You can, but I recommend using visualization with some precautions. It can be somewhat dangerous. The effect of visualizing and cognitively modeling, such as visualizing energy or image streaming, is that you are creating positive feedback loops in your brain, which will increase cortical excitability, which only increases the speed with which you are cognitively modeling your object. For example, if you are visualizing healing energies to aid healing, you are allowing your visual cortex to add cortical excitability to your objective, which only helps to cognitively model it faster. But cognitive connections are sticky. A lot of people end up with psychosis because they create a bunch of pathological connections in their brain without realizing, and that creates adherent patterns of thought. So this is why you should be wary of visualizations. And this is why I think a lot of those more ancient systems always teach kind of a code of ethics, or to improve the person first, be more compassionate, be more loving. Because if you go into these things that cultivate power, which is fine, and I think is good, there's always this risk of you just increase everything within you. So if you've got a little bit of schizo in you, you just become more schizo. And I feel like visualizations and imagination practice do this par excellence. Like I feel, I don't have a real statistic on this, but if you give 10 guys an imagination practice, 7 of them are going to come back a little delusional. Usually visualizing the different sensory modalities of a single object is safe, but don't mix a lot of things, especially if they are emotionally charged. And that's the other thing. Imagination is one thing, but then emotionally charging things, that's what creates all of the sticky cortical connections. I think that's why a lot of meditation schools kind of teach this negation. It's first you negate the self, or the little self, that which is false within you, your emotions, your reactions, your thoughts. If you have mastery over those things, then you can kind of go into those things like this. Because if you don't, then if things get emotionally charged, if you're an angry person, it'll make you more angry. If you're a lustful person, it'll make you more lustful, etc., etc. It's better to learn to increase the speed at will, and very specifically in a brain area. That's what you are doing with my method. Learning to do it for the cortical areas responsible for the perception of the sound and your object of visual concentration. Then you can use the same principles for anything you want. Pro tip: tobacco makes it easier to accelerate your cognitive processes. Get out those wizard pipes, Anon. The meme is real. That's why it's so widely used by shamans, and shamans get a mention. But they don't know why it works. Now you and I do. Why do you think you are closer to the truth than X? Just who the hell are you? Stop trying to find an objective truth. You can't. Just know thyself and wake up. Any thought is a tool. Any model is just a tool. Truth is a tool. At least as far as human capacity goes. So yeah, he's kind of becoming what would you call it? Like an occult utilitarian? Something like that. Truth is definitely something in a state of flux to a human, but I don't know, he might be getting a little too, things need to have a utility, you need to be pragmatic, results do matter, but he may be falling too far into the utilitarian mode of things. What about the risk of psychotic episodes? Don't use psychedelics while practicing. Agreed. They can intensify the experience to the point where it's not controllable, definitely. Learn to control and see your own cognitive processes. 100%. Insight meditation is useful for this. Use the book I recommended. And learn to down-regulate activation. This is more complex, but if you do concentration meditation and use the resource I mentioned, you will eventually get it. If you recognize that you are in a psychotic episode, this is often the hardest part, ground yourself in your body and focus less on the experience of psychosis. Things like exercising, cleaning, cooking, etc., it can help a lot. Frame yourself in your ordinary world with your actions. This is something interesting. This is why I recommend cultivating a circle of normie friends. And what I mean normie friends, I don't mean like just pure NPC normie men. I mean like just people who do normal things. And they're not hostile to esoteric, but having normie friends is a good way to stop you from being a complete space cadet. Like someone who, you ask them what they do on the weekend, it's like, yeah, I saw the latest movie. And then they're like, what did you do? And you're like, yeah, I traveled to the fifth dimension. And they're like, wow, that's crazy. And, they're not hostile to it, but it kind of just goes over their head. Having good normie friends is very grounding. And I would actually recommend that, a cultivation of a circle like that. If you really want to keep grounded, that's one thing you should definitely aim for. Frame yourself in your ordinary world with your actions. Yeah. If it's bad enough, a visit to the ER might be needed. Okay, at least he's being serious about his recommendations. So what do I even use this for? I have no use for psychic powers. I've got a better question. Who is already using it on you, and to which effect? Hey, my boy. What about talking with entities? They seem to have complex intelligences of their own. How is that just probability manipulation? They're egregors, independent conscious constructs that are basically a decentralized self. Egregors mentioned? Read the Mark Stavish book. There is no other resource that's better. They borrow processing power from the subconscious cognitive computation of those who think about, cognitively model them. That's why fear is something that makes these entities stronger. When you fear something and want to get away with it, your brain tasks your subconscious mind with cognitively modeling it. Because your mind needs to understand it to be able to get away from it and survive it. But it's also directing all of your subconscious computing power to enhancing the entity. That's how some of these entities feed off your energy sometimes. It's also why some alien encounters are weird on purpose, cognitive hazards. Some egregors have disdain for us. That's why they refer to us as containers. We contain both them, you could be seen as a prison, and to the psychic energy, we could be feeding them. 100%, once again, go read Egregors by Mark Stavish. This is a #1 beginner book. If you haven't read this, your education is incomplete. Why is your system superior? Because it explains every other one. Knock knock, Nagarjuna wants to have a word with you. When you cognitively model a magic system, you are giving it energy, and it becomes more powerful. This system contains every other one. Every time anyone has given energy to their system, they are also giving it to this one. I don't know about that one. It's by definition the broadest, which makes it the most powerful. Yeah, so here's the thing. With magic systems, what do you mean by magic? A lot of people have this, magic is just the will extrapolated into the world, and it's like, I get it, but that is a reduction of what magic is. Like, you're basically saying magic is I push a button and then thing happen. Magic is I have a subjective desire and I force the objective world to align itself with my subjective desire. Magic is I'm thirsty, I need a glass of water. Hey bro, can you get me a glass of water? Oh look, I commanded you to get me a glass of water because I was thirsty and now I have a glass of water. Boom, magic. Like, that's not magic, bro. Like, I get it, you can manipulate things in the world with your will, and you may even be able to manipulate something occulted, something that people don't see, that then has an effect and it appears to be magical, but to call only that magic reduces magic. There's more to magic than that. Magic is a path of transformation. Think of it like this. Think of a 3-tiered image. And you have 3 different categories of people. So the top one is the religious. The religious people, they don't have any experience behind the veil, so to speak. They believe that there's something behind the veil, and that belief informs their ethos, their ethics, their morality, but that's about it. They don't really care about seeing, they just want to believe. Next, you have the spiritual, one level deeper. These are the seekers. You see them all the time on the internet, going to drum circles, trying to meditate. Maybe they take psychedelics, or maybe they participate in ecstatic rites, i.e. cacao ceremonies, whatever. These people experience certain things. They have odd experiences, sometimes very profound experiences, but they remain normal people. True change doesn't really take place in the very depth of their innermost being. Like, you can meet guys who've done ayahuasca 13 times, and they'll have a whole bunch of stories to tell you, crystallized in their memory, but they're not different from you or me. They're normal people. To them, their spiritual path is a circle. They go out, they experience things, and they end up at the beginning again. And that is enriching to them, and some people just see that as the whole path. There is no path, whatever. Cool story, bro. That's the spiritual people. Next, the deepest level are these guys, which I would call the mystics. And the mystics are, they're the serious people. Mystics don't believe they know. They have a profound, deep emotional experience as well. Like, you ever meet a real, genuine mystic, there's something almost impressive about it. Even if you're an atheist, you can't help but like this person. And I'm talking about real, something real. And the thing about the mystic is, the problem with the mystic is no mystic chooses to become a mystic. They didn't do anything. Something beyond the veil grabbed a hold of them and pulled them on their path. This is the very antithesis of magic. The path of magic, understood properly, is a doing. It is where the magus does something. And this something is the catalyst which begins a process of ascension, or of union, or of transformation. The path of magic transfigures the person, changes them. And yes, you do get skills, you may get faculties, you may get magical powers or whatever, but the point of the path of magic is really the same as the mystic. The magus and the mystic are twins. Those paths are twins. It's just the path of magic. You do something to initiate that process. And the powers that you get along the way are a litmus test of your attainment. This is the other thing that differs. It's like, it's not about getting powers for the lols, because powers don't really matter, but also they do matter. Why? Because not everyone who has powers has attained, necessarily, but no powers means no attainment. They are a litmus test. Let me say that again. Having magical powers doesn't mean you're anything special, but having no powers, no faculties, no experience, no skill means no attainment, no mastery, no initiation. This is the path of magic. There are other considerations such as left versus right brain perceiving. It's nothing you can't figure out on the go. Well, it's probably as much as it's ethical to discuss. Yeah, I guess. One more important thing. Love is always wise. This is not so much a statement on the nature of love as it is telling you to use it as a compass. P.S. If anyone is interested in trying, you can use any site such as this one. Online tonegenerator.com and use the sawtooth waveform. Anon has an interesting little theory here, but it's nothing too impressive, to be perfectly honest. It's a single technique, and it has a vague philosophy around it which doesn't encapsulate all other systems. I mean, he talks about egregors, but he doesn't talk about other beings or entities that actually exist, like celestial intelligences, angels, diamonds. What about them? Actual other entities. It's not just humans and then constructed beings, egregors, just like those are the only two things that exist. Once again, it's a single technique. You can try it out and get something out of it, I'm sure, but in the end, I'm going to give it a pass. 6 out of 10.